Hey everybody, this is Chris Thompson and welcome to session number 14 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. He lives on a pie-shaped lot. He disables cookies on his internet browser and he's eaten kangaroo meat. Welcome back, Mike.
Kangaroo meat sucks, just for the record. It was horrible.
I had alligator meat.
Oh, let me guess. It tastes like chicken, right?
In Florida. Yeah, actually, it's totally fine.
Yeah, everybody says, oh, it tastes like chicken. Try rattlesnake. Tastes like chicken. Eat chicken!
It was deep fried and in batter, so maybe that helped.
Yeah, nobody says here, try these chicken wings, because they taste just like crocodile. It's like, come on.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, let's get into talking about hypnosis.
Okay.
So on the last podcast, which was number 13, we were talking about the most recently completed hypnosis training on the University of Toronto campus.
Yes, a couple of weeks ago.
It was fantastic, and there's so much that we didn't have time to talk about, so I want to continue on with that. But before we do, I want to remind you all again that we're planning a 5-day training. Mike is delivering the best training in the world on hypnosis, and it will be here in beautiful Toronto, and we're targeting September 24th through September 28th, and hopefully by the time this even goes online, that'll be a confirmed date.
Right. We have about 5 or 6 people booked already confirmed. This will be great for international students, people coming from out of town, because you can spend a stretch of time with us instead of doing 2 separate weekends, and you'll love the city. There's great restaurants, there's great art galleries, museums. If you like culture, Toronto's the place. We're right on Lake Ontario, and we will have a blast swimming through the oceans of unconsciousness together.
Mike does not do mass trainings. We're not filling an amphitheater full of students. This is small group training. You get real one-on-one attention and education.
And we also provide a lot of previous students who are master hypnotists who've worked with me, and they come in at their own expense, and that to be resource students or resource people for you to help you with what you're learning, because they just love being there. And
there is a reason they keep coming back.
In fact,
I'm one of them.
And I'm one of them. And you're one of them. We're all one of them, right. Whatever they are.
Who are they? Okay,
let's dreaded they. Take it away.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that we didn't have a chance to squeeze into 13. So here we are on podcast 14. I want to talk about dental hypnosis. You had a really fantastic demo you did with Lisa in the class.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to make that part of the course from now on. I'm doing way more demos because I like people to see this freaky stuff of visual hallucinations and anesthesia. I mean, I've always taught people how to do it, but because it's sort of second nature, I forget how amazing it is for people to see it done. So we'll do it all the time. Lisa was great.
Yeah, so what I was hoping to do is I'll describe what I noticed, and then maybe you can talk about how you can use glove anesthesia to work with people who haven't had the level of anchoring that she had clearly had, because I think she said she'd had 15 root canals. So she was a great subject to come up, and you were able to very quickly induce trance and create that anesthesia. But for someone who hasn't gone through that before, you're going to have to go through a little bit more of a rigorous process.
Oh, not much though,
not
Chris.
Not much. That's right. A little bit more. In any case, what I noticed, which I found fascinating, was you brought Lisa up, you did a very quick induction on her, and then you suggested numbness, as if a needle of Novocaine was being injected into her lower lips, or not lips, gums, wherever the dentists put those things. So here's what we all noticed as students watching. Her face immediately went asymmetrical. And then when you asked her to talk, she couldn't talk clearly. It was completely slurred speech, and her face was genuinely asymmetrical. So for all those of you out there who think all hypnosis is fake, you can't do that sort of thing consciously. You can't
make your face asymmetrical by conscious choice. But what I did, Chris, was, you're correct. She did say that I asked for somebody who had a lot of dental work, because that just makes it quicker for the class. She'd had a lot of root canals, and consequently she was well accustomed to dentists using massive needles full of, I think they're using xylocaine now, which is more profound than Novocaine and lidocaine, to create a localized anesthesia. And when you get the lower jaw anesthetized, the dentist will grip your cheek in a very specific way and then thrust the needle of doom way down inside the mouth, down towards the mandibular angle, injects it all there, and the entire side of your lower jaw then becomes paralyzed, because he's not just injecting it into the gum, he's going right for the root nerve further back. Now, so with Lisa, I just did some quick induction. I can't remember what it was. As I always say to you, Chris, and you know what I mean, I find it easier to do what I do than to explain what I do. Most of the time it's just unconscious. But somehow I got her in a trance, gripped her jaw and cheek in my hand, and with the other hand mimicked injecting a syringe full of xylocaine in her mouth back towards the mandibular angle. And in a matter of seconds, her face went slack on that side. She reported the entire side of her tongue had become numb. And then the numbness, she was wiping her face because she felt like she was drooling and couldn't stop it because her face had gone so slack. And again, this is something that's anchored. We're all accustomed, if we've had a lot of dental work, as I have, being from Britain and having Austin Powers teeth that are now fixed by wonderful veneers at the hands of Dr. Bill Kerr. But if we've had a lot of dental work, just gripping the face in that manner and sort of giving it a little shake and pretending to inject something is sufficient to cause anesthesia to take place. When I do this on someone in the class, it actually, a lot of the time, I feel the anesthesia creeping down the side of my tongue at the same time. It's so quick that the suggestion takes hold with me as well. We're running one of the patterns.
Okay, so if you are a dentist or anyone else dealing with a patient who has pain or is going to have pain, how do you use anesthesia? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the glove anesthesia method?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. In fact, if you ask people, generally speaking, what hypnosis is good for, the public perception is
smoking.
Yes, it's a flawed one. He means cessation, of course, not starting.
It's very good to start.
Yeah, we'll get you up to 4 packs a day with hypnosis, and I guarantee you're going to be hooked for life. No, it's not like that at all. People always, if I'm on a plane, and I never want to talk about what I do on a long flight because I know that they'll find it so spectacularly fascinating, they won't let me sleep or read. So iPods are great for sealing people out. But if I say, oh, I'm a hypnotist, oh, can you help me quit smoking? It's always the first question because everyone thinks that's what it's for. And it really doesn't have a very good track record for smoking cessation, primarily because most people who come in for it are not yet at threshold where they realize that something has to change. It has to be now and it has to be me. And they think you can wave a magic wand and they'll just quit. On the other hand, hypnosis shines in the area of pain management, pain control, pain relief. And so say you were a dentist and you had to do some work on a tooth. You can do a typical thing of reducing the amount of anesthesia, reduce it to about 3/4 of what you would normally use, and use hypnosis to supplement it. And when you get used to this, cut the anesthesia in half and use hypnosis to supplement until finally you'll be able to do it with no anesthesia at all, no xylocaine. And the way you do this is you make a limb, a hand become cataleptic, hover rigid, floating in the air, give standard metaphors for the hand being cold and numb, either plunging it into a snowdrift on a bright winter's morning or whatever, a bucket of ice water, get the hand nice and numb, get an idiomotor signal from the subject so that when the hand is numb, they then nod. And then all you have to do is compound the numbness. Now, you can compound even the tiniest degree of numbness in that hand. You cannot compound nothing. Nothing times nothing times a billion is still nothing. So get some degree of numbness in the limb, which is hovering, and then have it move. Have it travel up their shoulder, down the other hand, move to the other hand. And every time it travels, the numbness doubles or increases. And then have it move down to one foot, and then the other foot, then back up to the original hand. By the time you've gone around the circuit, even once, you'll have a very high degree of numbness in that limb. And at which point, you simply have the person place their anesthetized limb against their jaw and permit all the numbness to transfer into the jaw, and their hand will only sink down as rapidly as all the numbness travels and deals with all the trauma and soreness, so that when the procedure is over, there will be no pain and no post-operative problems whatsoever. That's right. And you always aim for anesthesia, which is no sensation at all. But sometimes you'll get analgesia, which is sensation but no pain. And that'll work just as well for something like a dental procedure.
Now, if you are dealing with a sore muscle in the back of the neck or something like that, you can have coming out of trance concomitant with the moving of that numbness to the correct spot, so that now
Certainly.
I can correctly function, right? And I don't need to be in trance.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, you could not be able to reach it with your hand, for instance. Say it was in the middle of your back, you had a pulled muscle. But what you can do is you can, again, make a hand become numb and make a hand become cataleptic and numb. Move the numbness around, increasing it till it comes back to the hand. Run around 2 cycles if you have to. Foot, hand, whatever. Make the hand very, very numb. And now also suggest that it's not just numbness but it's an anti-inflammatory agent as well, and we'll put it round another loop. And you simply pre-frame it with something like, have you ever taken ibuprofen or, another anti-inflammatory? Most people have, and you say that removes inflammation, which also removes pain. And this works the same way. Let's put a layer of anti-inflammatory on. And you are causing them to access a template that they can then use to eliminate the inflammation as well. So now you have the anti-inflammation and the numbing sensation flow up their hand into the middle of their back. And when it has all transferred and the feeling is so much better, then and only then will the hand sink down and you will awaken from trance.
Beautiful. So I've learned that from you, that bring someone out of trance concomitant with the installation of whatever effect you want.
Oh gosh, yes. How many otherwise really good hypnotists forget to install resources? I'm going to keep saying that on this podcast until I stop seeing hypnotists making this mistake. They do great work, but they don't install the resources. They don't ever put the software in place. You've got to put the brain software in, unpack it, and have it start running. I said before, it's like you need a piece of software for your computer. You find out it's a Future Shop. You see a flyer online. You go to Future Shop. You find it on the shelf. You go, here it is. And you look at it and you read the package. This is it. And you start to feel better already because this is going to fix your problem. And you put it back on the shelf and go home and wonder why your computer is still screwed up. It's the same with hypnosis. Find the resource, and if you're not careful, simply finding the resource will cause a proximity installation, so you'll begin to exhibit the signs of being free of the problem just because you found it, but it's not installed. Make it concomitant with awakening or something else. You will only come out of trance feeling fantastic as rapidly as you install that program and it's up and running perfectly now.
That's right. All right, so I love that. That whole topic is very fascinating to me. The next thing I wanted to talk about is convincers. So, remind us all, in the direct method, you do debunking of hypnosis, demystifying
it. Debunking of everything I do.
Debunking the mythology, I think I meant to say.
Right. Wide awake now.
Demystifying of hypnosis.
Yeah.
Testing for suggestibility. And we all really know what that means.
Paradigm.
Then you do your induction. Then you do your deepening. And after deepening comes... Convincers.
Right.
So.
Convincers are things that you do with the subject within a trance state, because convincers show the subject after the fact that they have been hypnotized. You have to ratify the trance state for them. Now, ratify means to make it real for them, like ratifying a contract makes it legitimate. To ratify the trance makes it real for the subject. And in Ericksonian methods, we typically don't do this sort of thing because we're building in time distortion and amnesia and all this stuff. I worked with a young actor once who came out of trance after 90 minutes, 2 hours of work, and it felt like 5 or 6 minutes, and he thought I'd changed all the clocks and watches, including the one he was wearing, because he just could not believe that much time had passed. Now, that ratifies the trance form. He knows something happened. And if you ratify the trance, then you're not going to run into this sort of thing where the person says, well, I don't think it worked because I don't think I was hypnotized. And you can tell them up front, you'll hear what I'm saying, you'll know everything going on. It is a heightened state of awareness. You're not going to black out and, have no idea what's happening like you've had a general anesthetic. You will be aware, you'll know what I'm saying. And then they still come out of it and say, I don't think it worked. How come? Well, I was aware of everything you said and I knew what was going on. And you'll get to the point you want to strangle them. So rather than strangle the person, which is counterproductive and can lead to a lengthy jail term, what you do instead is ratify the trance so you have something to point back to. So they come out of trance and you have time distortion or amnesia in the Ericksonian model, or in the more direct authoritarian type of paternal hypnosis, they come out of trance and go, oh yeah, that's weird. I guess I was under hypnosis because I couldn't open my eyes, or I couldn't put my hand down when you said, or I couldn't stand up, which are all different types of cataleptic phenomena that we can create.
So let's talk a little bit about the types of convincers that you've used. I mean, you've done millions of different things on stage shows, but in therapeutic context, say you use an element induction, you elicit a somnambulistic trance, you induce or elicit, whatever. You induce a somnambulistic trance. What types of convincers have you used? I mean, I saw you do the chair switch one. With Andrea, you had her switch chairs and come out of trance.
Yeah, when you come out of trance in a totally different chair, you have no doubt that you were hypnotized.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because the concept is people are going to hear and understand everything that's going on unless they're told to forget it. In which case...
And in which case, while you're on that topic, amnesia is a great trance ratifier. And the best way to create amnesia... I mean, well, there's lots of ways to do it. You can simply open and close loops to do it. But just for simple terms here, the best way to create amnesia is to make it active instead of passive. It's better to tell them that they will forget than that they will not remember. Mm-hmm. Forgetting is an active procedure. And I would like to say something like, and your unconscious mind will cause you to forget all the components of this trance that you don't need to remember at all, so that when you awaken from this completely and alertly refreshed, the pieces missing will be the pieces that you will notice are gone that'll make this so real and vivid for you wide awake now.
Exactly. All right. So...
I'm on a roll.
Yeah, you're on a roll. So amnesia, for sure, is a good trance gratifier. I also watched you do spontaneous catalepsy of the arm with, I can't remember who it was, but someone in the class. You did an ailment induction, I believe, and then, boom, vertical or horizontal cataleptic arm in the air.
Yeah. And catalepsy is easy to create because it was the brilliant Milton Erickson, my hero, still the greatest hypnotist who has ever lived, even though there is some attempt to make disparaging comments about him now he's gone. I said it's the Bruce Lee phenomena. Bruce Lee could beat anybody on the planet until he died. 10 seconds after he was dead, everybody's grandmother could have beaten him up. Well, it's the same thing with Erickson. I mean, read his actual papers. It is so far beyond anything we're seeing in the world right now. And Erickson would ratify trance through all kinds of different ways as well. And the most amazing thing about this, Chris, is I had a point when I began a few minutes ago, and now I'm getting amnesia for the entire thing. Oh, yeah, it was something about amnesia, wasn't it?
Yes, probably.
Probably. I have no idea where I was going with that. You got a vein sticking out your head, man. You're all freaked out, too.
We'll come back once we remember, Mike.
Oh, thanks, Chris. There, it's come back.
Okay, let's move on then. And then when you do remember, we'll come back to amnesia.
Nice.
I completely forget where we're going next.
That's nuts, isn't it? We've done so much amnesia in the class. We start talking about it. It starts frickin' firing again.
Oh, it's a good thing I wrote notes. Okay, spatial anchoring. Let's talk about spatial anchoring. Anchoring in general, and then, of course, I think spatial anchoring comes out of new code NLP so much.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, you know more than I do by a mile and a million miles. Why don't you talk about it? Talk about spatial anchoring, how it relates to standalone NLP edits, and how you can use it in hypnosis if you get people moving.
Well, that's a complicated question, Chris, and I'd like to answer that now. Anchoring is just simply attaching some sort of stimulus to a state, and it happens all the time naturally. We see a police car roaring up the road behind us in our rearview mirror, and it causes a jolt. We hear Christmas music. Christmas is a huge anchor. I hear Christmas music and see Christmas trees. It starts firing this state called Christmas, which is a big one for me because I've always loved it ever since I was a kid. And all these different things become linked. I only have to hear American Pie by Don McLean, and I remember where I was in Scarborough, Ontario when I first saw it or heard that song. My girlfriend who I was going out with at the time, hearing it on the radio, it's anchored to a particular feeling, a state at that time. Now, post-hypnotic commands are anchors as well. And the key with anchors is you want to fire them, or at least install them, at the moment of peak state. Someone will gradually go into a state, the state will peak, and then it will fade. And you have to really hit it at the peak state in order to get the maximum effect. That's why I recommend not trying to time it, not saying to the person, okay, think of a time you had that resource and you felt great, and you're watching to, press this thing on the back of their hand where you're going to anchor all this, and then they give you a little nod when they're in that state, and you frantically try to hit that button that you've designed as the spot that's going to anchor it or squeeze their wrist or whatever. It's better to set up your anchor in advance, squeezing or holding their wrist in a particular way you can replicate, or touching their arm, whatever it is, have them access the state, which is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And the moment they access it, they give you a nod and you let go of the anchor at that instant. That way you're not going to anchor the state going out. You're going to access it anchor it and then be able to access it at the peak of the state. Once you fire that anchor later, you will have immediate access to that entire state.
That's almost, it's making me think that the emotional state is more like a vector than an actual
That's a
point.
great way to look at it. Yeah, a vector. Interesting way to look at it.
So vector meaning it has a direction, a flow to it, and so you're anchoring it on the way in rather than on the way out.
Yes, trying to hit it just at that spot. Also, so now you get into spatial anchors. you'll sometimes run into a discussion point when somebody's all resistant. This is great for negotiation. I teach major corporations this, and they'll be having an argument with someone, and he's just resistant on a point, and you put your hands out in front of you, a foot apart, with your palms facing each other, and you say, okay, that's a really good point. Let's just put that aside for a moment. And with your hands, you move it about 4 feet over, 3 feet over to the side and leave it there.
Like you're moving a cardboard box.
Like you're moving a non-existent cardboard box and then come back to the discussion. And if they bring it up again, you again say, no, we'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to deal with this. Let's put that aside, and you do it again. A couple of times we'll do it. Now you put all those emotions in that state off to the side. Well, the key is if it's something problematic, just don't ever go back there. There's no need to in the discussion point, and you can move that state somewhere else. And I use this with chairs all the time. On the Sunday of our most recent training, a woman in the course, a really good hypnotist, learned super fast. We're going to say her name, Lisa, and she was just a wonderful person, jumped into the deep end from day one, just exhibited amazing trance stuff, became an excellent hypnotist super fast. And on the final day, we were doing art gallery, which is a procedure I designed a number of years ago to work content-free with various problems. And so you're walking the person through a procedure that enables them to fix a problem without the therapist or hypnotist knowing what the problem is. Well, she got a major shift from it and felt really different afterwards, but she had no conscious awareness of what had shifted. And she actually just emailed me today because she's figured out what it was. Now, most of the time, the person's going to know what was fixed in that instant. But she didn't. She just noticed something had changed. And she said, actually, I feel like crying right now. And you could see it in her demeanor. Her eyes were watering and she was quite distressed. And I said, look at that chair over there. And she looked at the empty chair. I said, I want you to see another you sitting in that chair, happy and smiling and breathing really deep now. And she wasn't even in a trance. And she began breathing deeper and staring at it, went into state. And I said, can you see that happy, smiling Lisa? She said, yes. And as she's looking at this other one, I'm squeezing her shoulder and setting up an anchor. And I said, I want you to go sit in that other chair and leave all the negative emotions in this chair. Now, you can do it just that quick. She jumped up, went, sat in the other chair. Immediately her mood, her demeanor changed. She stopped crying. And I said, and now bring all those resources back to this chair with you, to this bad state. So she came back, brought this resource state back, sat down in the chair. I squeezed her shoulder to enhance it again on the same anchored spot. And instantly, the last vestige of the crying stopped, her face flushed with integration, and she got a huge smile on her face and has been in a great mood ever since because the anchor, the resource state, was powerful enough by shifting the breathing, shifting the physiology to completely obliterate the negative state and the last bit of work that needed to be done.
And that is very typical NLP editing using state management and anchoring, right?
Is, yeah.
And
so, it was just a spatial anchor in this case, combined with an anchor on her shoulder, a kinesthetic anchor.
Right. So I think it's worth reminding people who aren't familiar with NLP that NLP was modeled after 3 different methods of therapy, one of which being Ericksonian hypnosis, which is why NLP has so much built-in componentry of hypnosis.
That's right. And interestingly enough, NLP came out of the work of Virginia Satir, who was a family therapist who could work with an entire family and would know which person in the family was the one who she just tapped with a little hammer on that person. It would fix the whole dysfunctional family. And then there was Fritz Perls, who also used very directive methods. He created Gestalt therapy, would put people in chairs and have them scream at the empty chairs, oh, it was their father, and all these things.
And that's not hypnotic at all.
That's not hypnotic at all, fantasizing your father in a chair. And so he would be very, very specific, and Virginia was saying how specifically and how do you know that? And so they went and saw Milton Erickson, Bandler and Grinder, that is, and it went out the window because Milton was saying, and as you notice, all those sensations that take you back to the processes from before, and each and every one of you is going to find way down within that change that you wanted to make. And when you put those pieces in place, there's not going to be an understanding deeper than the one that you start to feel now. And people are going into trance, and he's totally indirect. So that's why you need both sides of the coin. You need the indirect nominalizations of the Milton model and the direct, very specific information gathering techniques, language, clarifying language of the meta model.
So the Milton model and the meta model are polar opposites.
Yes, and both useful, both very useful.
Both very useful. In fact, when just dealing with a personal problem, you're having an argument with someone, using the meta model can be very helpful to understand exactly what the problem is.
Yes. How specifically would you use it, Chris?
Well, I would probably ask, well, what specifically would you like me to do to help make this better?
She's depressing me. How specifically is she depressing you? Yeah. I hear you.
How can I help?
Right.
Ask how, ask
Instead
what.
of what's wrong.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a useful question.
Why are you so upset? I mean, because you'll get a whole bunch of...
And then they'll name all the reasons. If you had the week I'd had and that idiot I worked down the hall with... No. What do you want and what have you got to do to get it? Most of your life, so those of you listening, most of your life can be a lot better if you just remember, clarify what do you want and what do you have to do to get it. And if you want to make it easy, check out my navigator system online that moves you in 5-second increments towards all that you desire in life.
I was just going to say the same thing. Navigator system is awesome.
I made you say that.
Yes. Yeah, you hypnotized me, Mike. All right. We have a couple of questions here from...
Yes, bring them on.
Yeah,
let's open frame to the world.
I think so, because it was me occupying this podcast with all the things I wanted to talk about.
But now we have a question from Jupiter.
All the things that I was guessing that you guys want to hear. So let's actually ask some questions that you asked. So question comes in from Andrew. And I don't know where Andrew is from. It was a Gmail account, so unfortunately no geographical information there. I had a question for the podcast. He says, what are some of the best self-hypnosis programs that you've installed or resource states that you've accessed or changes you've made through self-hypnosis, Mike?
The biggest change I've made, if we count NLP procedures as hypnotic, which NLP is full of built-in hypnosis, so is timeline therapy and a lot of these things, even EFT and so on, even though they're not specifically hypnotic in nature, they can induce a trance state just by virtue of doing them. And the most powerful ones for me have been building in confidence and removing problem states like phobic stuff from when I was a little kid. I used to have a horrendous phobia, fear of high ceilings. I've mentioned before, it's so rare it doesn't even have a name. A gymnasium would put me into panic attacks. And it's all completely gone, and that's all through self-work.
We should just call it gymnophobia.
Gymnophobia. No, that doesn't work. That's something entirely different.
We need to come up with a silly name for fear of ceilings, high ceilings.
Well, if you're listening, somebody Google gymnophobia. I want to know what that is because I can't do it right now because we're recording.
Or send in your suggestions for funny names for it. Okay. Anything else?
Man, I think that would probably...
Fibromyalgia.
Oh, yeah.
But that wasn't hypnosis so much.
Hypnosis, though,
you did a lot of work with hypnosis, but then you mostly used...
Energy psychology to get rid of things like that. Yeah.
Which you teach in the pain management course.
Yes, we do. And let me just mention this because somebody had sent me an email, Chris, and didn't come in through the website. They found me directly. And someone said, oh, you're mentioning EFT a lot, and do you use it a lot? And I do use EFT quite frequently for very specific things. It's a very useful way of clearing all kinds of obstacles and pain, physical pain, and so on. I applaud Gary Craig, the NLP master practitioner and engineer who took Roger Callahan's work with thought field therapy and turned it into one simple algorithm for everything, which was easy to learn. But I think Gary Craig made a mistake at one point, and here's where I would like to offer an alternative model to the universe, and I think you might think I'm correct when you hear my reasoning. Gary said that we can get rid of a lot of emotional problems, fear, anger, sadness, trauma, depression, all of these things with EFT, which is certainly true, and the effect seems to last. Now, he also said we can use it on physical problems like pain and fibromyalgia and headaches and things like that. But he drew the conclusion that the reason we could make it work on physical things as well was because these physical problems had an emotional component, and that's why EFT was working. But I would say that this is incorrect science. It's actually poor science, because suppose he discovered it the other way around. Suppose he discovered you could use it on fibro, the pain of headaches, toothaches, sprained ankles, whatever, tight muscles, and then discovered later that you could use it on emotional problems. Would he have gone on to say it's because the emotional problems all contain a physical component, because that was the order he discovered it? No, of course not. The reality is this. Emotional problems are disturbances in the energetic system. And the reason the physical problems can be relieved with EFT is because they are also disruptions in the energetic system. It's nothing whatever to do with emotions. He's gone upward and led to the wrong conclusion with that.
And besides all of that, does it really matter why it works?
No, it doesn't at all.
All that matters is that it does work.
No, it's just my attitude as a researcher coming to the surface here. I was damn well correct, everybody.
I agree with you. All right, let's see if we can get through another quick one here from Christina, and then we'll do closing metaphor. Christina, I won't read the whole question, but what she's essentially asking is a variation of a very common question about visualization. In her case, there is a particular teacher that she finds that she can't visualize unless she either has a photograph, or when she does visualize, she sees like a 1 or 2 second flash and then it disappears. Now, a lot of people who are using self-hypnosis CDs, they ask, well, is this going to work for me because I can't visualize? And we always tell people, well, you can visualize or just pretend that you are.
Right.
I think there's a distinction here. Visualization doesn't have to be you making some perfect HD 1080p visual representation in your mind.
Well, isn't that how you see it?
No, it isn't.
Neither.
So let's set the record straight. I mean, most people don't visualize perfectly. So what do you see when you visualize,
right.
Mike?
An imperfect copy of the real world. I'm just closing my eyes now, and it is 3D, come to think of it. Now, everyone visualizes. You have to. If you see your mother on the street, how do you know it's her? Because you have an internal map, a visual map that you are comparing it to. Provided you haven't heard her voice or smelled her perfume or something like that, you are making a comparison with an internal map or representation. You do visualize, but it's not like the external world. It's nowhere near as clear. Now, as to why you're noticing that some things are not quite as vivid as others, I've no idea. It's just one of those strange little things that maybe just axiomatic to you and nobody else. But I would still suspect that through practice, the visualization of these people will probably become just as clear over time. It just remains to be seen if that is in fact the case. Now, here's a question for you since you've sent that in. Everybody who's listening, look straight ahead, provided you're not driving or flying a Boeing 747 right now or something else that requires your attention. Look straight ahead and notice the periphery of your vision. In fact, you might put both hands up to the side of your head, about 2 feet on either side, way back where you can't see them. Bring them forward, wiggling your fingers until you can just see the two of them. So you're finding the exact edge of your peripheral vision as your foveal vision is straight ahead. Now, as you do that, you can take your hands away and notice, what does the edge look like? Is it a line? Well, no. It's not an anything. Well, what color is it beyond the edge? Is it black? There's nothing there at all.
I just went into trance doing that. That was weird. I remember you gave me that exact exercise last week, and you asked me, well, what color is it beyond your peripheral vision? Well, there is no color. There's nothing there.
There's nothing there, and there's no border. There's no boundary.
Totally bizarre. Okay, let's end with a closing metaphor.
All right, this is one you're well familiar with, Chris. Again, the best metaphors are from our own personal lives, I believe. This one is called Don't Awaken the Dragon. A number of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was at a shopping mall in Toronto, which is called Eglinton Square. And I had a post office box there, and I was picking up some stuff, and I decided to get lunch. And the food court was quite full of people. I grabbed a sub sandwich, sat down on a long, narrow table with stools in front of it that was facing out into the mall, and other people were on these little tables all around the place, round tables and so on. So I started eating lunch, and a guy came up and sat to my left with one seat left vacant between us. So the two of us were on this table built for about 5. And I noticed in my periphery, he was back to the periphery, he was quite a large guy, outweighed me by about, easily 50 to 60 pounds. Big, bulky, in his early 30s, I suspect. And he sat down and he just said, out of the blue, that Rolex you're wearing is a fake. Now, first of all, it isn't. My wife bought it for me for my 39th birthday 20-odd years ago. And it's a wonderful testimony of what she thinks of me. And so it got my back up a bit. And I said, no, it's not a fake. He said, no, it's a fake. And I said, actually, it isn't. It's been in 2 Rolex for cleaning. And I think they would know if it was a fake. No, it's a fake. And he says, it's a lady's watch, too. Now, this watch is a 3/4 size Rolex because I have small hands and small wrists. And the large one looks ridiculous on me. So it's a 3/4 size men's watch. I said, no, it's a 3/4 size for men with smaller hands like me. He said, nope. It's a lady's watch, and it looks stupid on you, too. So now, he has awakened the dragon. Now, I'm an easygoing guy, and Chris and my friends will tell you, I don't go looking for trouble. But now, because he's insulted my wife, saying she's bought a fake, and now he's saying it's a lady's watch I'm wearing, I turned to him and I said, look at me carefully. And he looked at me and I said, you notice I'm smiling? And he sort of didn't say anything. And I said, by now you're wondering why. Because you're trying to intimidate me. You've been a bully your entire life. But it's going wrong, isn't it? Because I'm supposed to be scared of you, and I'm not. And by now, you're doing an internal search, which of course is causing him to do an internal search, wondering what I know. That means I'm not afraid of you. And the reason I'm smiling is because this is going to end very badly for you, and I know how, and you don't. And I said, we're going to go out in the parking lot when I finish the sub and settle the insults you've thrown at me and my family. And he freaked, and he went away, and he went over to the donut stand, and he's pointing back at me and like saying I'm threatening him. And I just looked at them and shrugged like he was insane, because I'm this guy in his 50s just sitting there eating lunch, and he's this big bully coming in and trying to intimidate me. See, you should never wake up the dragon, because when you wake the dragon up, whatever he is in your life, you can have trouble putting him back in his cage. He doesn't always like to go back. Don't wake up the dragon.
I won't say wide awake now.
Thanks, Chris.
That was great. I love that story. So with that, we are wrapping up podcast session number 14 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel. I'm Chris Thompson, and you can head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com, sign up for our email list. We are going to be passing out information about the upcoming training in September, and it's going to be fantastic. Head on over to iTunes, leave a rating for the podcast, and make sure you get on our email list again on the website. I think I didn't just say that, did I?
I don't know. Clear your schedule. September 24th to 28th, Toronto, Canada. Come and study at the beautiful University of Toronto campus downtown in the world's most cosmopolitan city. Over 150 languages are spoken in Toronto. It's absolutely fantastic. Come and check it out. You're going to love it. We will have an absolute blast together. We'll have lunch together. We trance out together, etc.
Okay, I think it's time for the guitar extra, Mike.
Okay, you know what, Chris? I'm thinking I've heard it so many times I can probably sing it now.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. No, it doesn't work. Go back to the other one.